they bought. Brunin's mother had a silk dress of the same shimmering red gold as one of the bolts draped over a booth counter. He had seen it in her clothing coffer, but she rarely wore it. She had told him once, with blank eyes, that it was her wedding gown. Brunin paused at a trader's cart to fondle a litter of brindlehound pups. The trader also had a pair of tiny dogs with long, silky fur and colourful ribbons tied around their necks. The sound of their yapping hurt Brunin's ears. He tried to imagine his father entertaining such lap-rats in his household, and grinned at the image. FitzWarin was strictly a hound man. The larger the better. Ambling towards the horse market, Brunin wondered if he could steer his father's eye in the direction of a pied or jet-black pony this time, something that would stand out from common chestnut and brown. Of course, unusual colours cost more, and if the price was not reasonable, his father would refuse to buy. To reach the horse fair, Brunin had to cut down the thoroughfare where the weaponsmiths had set out their stalls. The sight of the shining sword blades, the axes, daggers, hauberks, helms, and sundry accoutrements of the warrior's craft seized both his sight and his imagination. Here was a knife in a tooled leather sheath, just like the one Mark wore at his hip. Here a sword with a grip of red braid, and an inscription scrolled in Latin down the blade. Brunin's mouth watered. Sometimes he would draw his father's sword from its scabbard and pretend that he was the great warrior Roland, defending the pass at Roncesvalles against the infidel. His grandmother had caught him once, and thrashed him for leaving sticky fingerprints on the polished iron. He had been more circumspect since, and, mindful of her words, he always cleaned the sword on his tunic before putting it away. A nobleman and his entourage arrived at the booth where Brunin was eyeing up the weaponry, and began inspecting the swords. Brunin watched the lord heft the blade that the craftsman handed to him. "Good balance," the lord nodded. "Grip's a little short. I don't want to lose my finger ends in battle." He swiped the sword through the air, testing the feel, following through with a deft backswing before handing the weapon round for an opinion. "That can be changed if you like the blade, my lord," said the trader. "Or there's this one." He presented another sword, this one scabbarded in tactile, rose-coloured leather. Captivated, Brunin moved closer, and was immediately pushed aside by a fair-haired squire attending the noble. "Out of the way, brat!" he sneered. "Get back to your nursemaid!" Brunin flushed. The youth was wearing a tunic of blood-red wool and had a knife at his belt, not much smaller than Mark's. One hand hovered close to the hilt, as if he were thinking of drawing it. Eyeing the implied threat, Brunin began to feel queasy. "He's lost his tongue," grinned a younger, stocky youth in blue. "Unless he's Welsh and doesn't understand us. He looks Welsh, doesn't he?" Brunin lifted his chin. Every muscle was stiff with the effort of holding his ground. "I'm not Welsh," he said. The lord ceased examining his second sword and glanced around. "Not. Gerald, leave the boy alone. Let him look if he desires." His tone was tolerant. "What's your name, boy?" Brunin delved for his manners. "Fulke, sir," he said, using his formal birth name. "Fulke FitzWarin." The humour faded from the man's eyes. "Of Whittington?" "Yes, sir." "And what might you be doing, strolling the booths on your own?" "Waiting for my father," Brunin answered. The noble raised his head and gazed around, as if expecting to see Brunin's father among the crowd. "Then perhaps you would do better not to wait in my vicinity," he said. His voice had lost its warmth. "If your sire is as careless with his lands as he is with his son, he may well end up losing both." Turning his back on Brunin with a deliberate air of dismissal, he handed the sword to the craftsman and set about discussing terms. Brunin was bewildered. He did not understand the sudden change, but knew enough to realize that his presence was unwelcome.